What's up, guys? We are back tonight. It's Wednesday, and tonight is the 50th show, which is cool. We're halfway to the century mark. I just started this thing a few months back. So it's been a crazy couple weeks here. I think the other week I had Jeremy Kaufman on, and then I did a show about like the whole RFK fiasco in LP Colorado, and this is just spreading with the LP. There's so much LP drama. I think we're all over it, but I'm going to give you guys a little bit more, I think, because that's just what we live for. I think, truthfully, libertarians are just like a microcosm for philosophical disagreements. That's just because we're such a wide spectrum. But tonight I have our vice presidential candidate, Mike Maat, who's been on my show before. I interviewed him before the convention. We've talked a couple times offline. He's actually been in some videos for the Emo Caucus as well. And I'm looking forward to talking to him again. I think that there's been a lot of like controversy around his campaign. And we definitely have some like pretty significant disagreements, but I'm not the kind of person to just speak out against something and not give them at least a chance to rebut what I'm saying. So I really wanted to get him back on the show. He can talk about it, answer some questions, and answer your questions too from YouTube. So I'm going to bring him up on stage. Mike, how you doing tonight, man?
Ben, it's so good to be with you. Thank you. That was quite an introduction. As a matter of fact, I'm going to start out right out of the box, challenging you on even your premise. My argument is going to be, I don't think we have disagreements that you think we do. How's that? I'm throwing that down. It's up to you to pursue them. But I am saying right now, at the end of this podcast, you're going to agree with me that you agree with me.
I don't know, man. Are you an anarchist or are you a minarchist?
I'm a minarchist.
Then right off the bat, you're a socialist to me. So,
well, that may be, but we at least agree that I'm a minarchist and you're an anarchist.
Sure. Obviously, like I kind of wanted to like get started off. Like the big thing that was controversial about like a month ago when I reached out, was the qualified immunity thing, because you had a case come up from a couple of years back, where you can say the case from how your perspective. Obviously,
this is the case of the in essence mistaken identity, the wrong guy in handcuffs. Is that the one we're talking about?
Right. Yeah. So it was like if I'm not mistaken, you went into the wrong house, right? And and put the wrong guy in handcuffs. And then they turned around, they sued the department. Yep. And essentially the controversy here is that we're libertarians, we're against qualified immunity, but you've exercised qualified immunity. So
that's not true. That's not true.
Okay. All right. So
I mean, I don't mind if we disagree on opinions, but at least let's get the facts right.
Sure.
This is not a QI case.
Okay. So I guess you tell me what happened there, and when it got to court, how was that resolved? Because my understanding was that it like you exercise qualified immunity, but if that's not true, then that's not true.
It's not true.
Okay, all right.
This was not a case in which QI applied, nor did I ask for it to be applied.
Okay, so what happened? So what happened? I guess in this case,
sure. We were dispatched. At the request of a neighboring agency, one of the agencies that was not our town, right? Go pick up a guy. He had engaged in a violent crime. We don't have to necessarily go into that, but a violent felony. And we were told, the address, the apartment building, and a description of which apartment, but not an apartment number. So, we go over there. Buddy of mine knocks on a door that he thought was probably the right apartment. Parenthetically, I would have thought so too, right? Knocks on the door. Guy opens the door. He asks his name, blah, blah, blah. He's in the apartment. I come by. I follow him in. And and the guy matches the description. He has the right beard, right complexion, ballpark, right age. I think he's probably the right guy, right? And
well, so and question two is because what I was reading about this, and some of this could be Twitter talk, some of this could be truth, but I'd like to hear from you. So the idea here is that there was a warrant for one house and you basically went into the wrong building, which you didn't have a warrant for. Was it basically your fault?
There was probable cause to make an arrest. There was not a warrant issued. It's similar in the sense that you've got probable cause. But we didn't bust down someone's door or something like that. My partner entered the apartment. I was outside of earshot regarding that conversation. But my partner obviously thought he had the fellow's permission to go into the apartment. No reason why he wouldn't. Was it ultimately
your say, everything that happened there?
No, I wasn't the first officer on scene. I was the officer who was responsible. I'm the guy who put him in handcuffs, which is why, that's my primary involvement here.
Would this have been considered like a no-knock warrant since there was no warrant? I guess there was no warrant. So it was
no. There was no. Okay. No entry was made against this guy's, permission or anything like that. He went in and during a conversation with this guy who turns out to be the wrong guy, right? Had no reason to believe there was anything weird happening, right? I mean, you got to feel for the guy on some level, right? It's just a weird circumstance. He doesn't know what's going on. He's obviously not the guy who was involved with the violence. So he and my partner in a conversation, I follow in. Holy cow, he matches the description. I put him in handcuffs. He says that he's not the guy whose name we have. His mom, I can't remember who lives with whom, but I think they live together. His mom, who, by the way, said, you do match the description. She goes off and gets his driver's license, brings it back. Driver's license indicates that it's not the guy whose, name it was that we were given. We take him out of handcuffs. He was in handcuffs for several minutes. I'm told it was something like 6 minutes. There's camera footage documenting all of this, that sort of thing. And he's upset, which, there have been a lot of people who say, well, it was only 6 minutes, settle down. But the truth is, nobody likes to be in handcuffs if you're not the right guy. Well, even if you are the right guy, nobody likes to be in handcuffs. But, he was obviously the wrong guy. He should not have ever been in handcuffs. It was a mistake. It was not a mistake that anyone had intended. It's not like people were targeting him or, giving up the wrong apartment, targeting the wrong. It was nothing like that. It was, a screw up, right? Had the wrong guy in handcuffs for all those minutes. And he is seeking redress in court, which as libertarians, that's what we support. We support the idea that you should be able to seek redress in court.
So ultimately, what came of that court case? So because you were named specifically, and
yeah, we all were. It was my understanding is that it has not been completely resolved. The city is going to have to give him presumably some money. I guess it's possible that the city will escape without giving him anything, but it's not for me to say, he was in handcuffs for several minutes. He was the wrong guy. How much that's worth is, up to the court to determine.
So how do you think as libertarians this should be rectified on your end? Because obviously there's some responsibility there. And I know that you're part of a team there. And obviously you're very outspoken for police reform too. So I understand, you want a lot of changes to happen. I think it's hard for some people to, in their mind, rectify that you're saying these things, but then they're seeing certain things here. And maybe some of the stuff is being fabricated or expanded upon through social media, as it always does. So how do you think that should be rectified.
I don't think there is a mismatch, Ben. To be honest with you, I think this is one of those circumstances where I'm going to assert you and I agree. I mean, there was a mistake made. This guy is seeking compensation for the mistake that was made. I don't know, what that compensation should be, but I do believe, as I think you do, that a court should be involved. I guess it would be okay if it were private arbitration. In this case, it's the court. The court is going to have to decide. Now, regarding police reform, I have been a staunch advocate, and for a long time, I would argue the leading advocate in our party for the idea that we should get rid of qualified immunity. I realize that has nothing to do with this case, but I think that we should get rid of qualified immunity and require police officers to carry their own liability insurance so that when mistakes are made, an insurance company can step in and say, your premiums are going up. Maybe you've made too many mistakes lately. Or in some case, they might say, this is an officer who just doesn't know how to follow protocol, maybe, or whatever, or further training is necessary, or maybe training should be different. Maybe protocols should be different. Maybe there is a public policy issue at hand. I think in this particular case, this case is interesting because the facts are sort of unusual and interesting. It's not interesting in the sense that there's public policy involved. I don't think anyone looks at this case and says, and therefore we need to change public policy. I mean, mistakes are mistakes. You want mistakes to be minimized, right? And so, yeah, you want to train your officers not to screw up.
Now, do you think that in terms of like police accountability, do you think that like what we have right now, the system we have in place, that they should be wearing like body cameras? Because obviously that's like kind of adds like a layer of like taxpayer funded something there, but it's also for
I do believe the police officers should carry body cams in this case.
And they don't do that in Florida, correct? That there's no body cams down there, or was there for this?
I'm sorry, can you hear me?
What? Yeah, I can hear you. Was there?
Yeah, I just said we were wearing body cams in that case.
Okay.
And I don't know in what proportion of agencies in Florida body cams are worn, but I know that in a lot of the agencies near where I used to work, body cams were worn. It's a recent phenomenon. It's only in the last, I guess, 10 years, less than that they've become prevalent, but it is a good thing. There are trade-offs. I get that. But on the whole, I think it's a very good thing in terms of holding police accountable and making sure that police understand that in effect they're being watched. I think that's a good thing.
It's not necessarily a bad thing. And like, so for instance, with my job, I work in the more construction industry, and I write estimates. I present quotes to people. I'm not like a laborer anymore or a foreman. So I go and I talk to customers. I deal with customers directly. Basically the entire time I'm working, I actually have an AI note taker that will hear everything I'm saying and create like a long list of notes for every project. And I use that as kind of a way to, one, remember the things I'm saying so that I don't write my quotes incorrectly. But two, it also, like, I'll make sure the customer's okay with me, recording or whatever, before I walk in. But, it also presents like a level of accountability. Like if I say something and I don't live up to my word, then I'm held accountable for that. Or if my customer comes
and
to
your customer.
Verbal, yes. Right. So if they agree to something that might not be in the contract that was verbal, then we can go back and listen to that. And we're like, we have that,
absolutely.
Clarity,
many times I was grateful to have had the body camera on because of stupid, things that people say that happened that really didn't happen, or at least didn't happen the way that they thought they did, or the way they remember they did, or the way that they were asserting that they did. And so the body cameras are much more often something that protects the officers than holds them accountable, but it's good for both.
Yeah. Well, so this case, obviously, like the body cameras, it's a great idea to hold people accountable, or the officers accountable. But I would also say that, based on what you're telling me, is that you wholeheartedly believe that if this person wanted to hold anyone accountable, they should have been able to hold you personally accountable. which means, if you didn't have qualified immunity and you did have like a liability insurance per se, you would basically they would be able to go after you directly instead of after a department as a whole. Am I wrong with what I'm saying here?
It's a little bit more nuanced than that. What I'm suggesting is that instead of QI, we carry liability insurance.
Right, now, which would, yeah.
Whether, okay, that is a slightly different issue than whether the officer's liability insurance or the department's liability insurance should be on the hook. As you know, when things go wrong in a car crash, for example, everyone's got well, not in every
not
case,
in New Hampshire. You don't have to have it in New Hampshire. So
right. So, but in those cases where there's two different people involved, they both have insurance. The insurance companies can argue quite bitterly about who should be on the hook. And so, I would anticipate that the city and their insurance company, or maybe they're self-insured, as many employers are, and an officer's insurance provider are still going to have arguments, right? There's no getting around that. In this particular case, and I think we need to be careful about hanging too much public policy implication in this particular case. It's not all that interesting or complex from a public policy point of view. But in this particular case, the root cause of the problem was that we weren't given very good information about which door to knock on, and then led to a colossal coincidence that the guy who answered the door matched the description. A horrific coincidence, right? Now, just because there was a horrific coincidence, a highly unusual coincidence, that doesn't mean that there wasn't a mistake made. That doesn't mean that he shouldn't be able to seek redress in court. He should. But now you've got lots of agencies involved, right? The agency that dispatched us, the information that we were given by our own dispatcher. One officer knocked on a door. Another officer put him in handcuffs. He was in cuffs for several minutes until we, were able to be sure that he was the wrong guy. Our city that employed, trained, and sent us there. There's a lot of people involved, right? Mm-hmm. How a court sorts that out about who is more or less responsible, I suppose, could be complex. But you and I are not here to, figure out how to save the tort system in gory detail. But fundamentally, bottom line, we want the courts to work. We don't want roadblocks for people to bring action.
So that kind of leads me into my next question. So, there's, we're obviously as libertarians, we are against prosecuting people for victimless crimes. You were a cop for the greater part of about a decade, right? Am I wrong with that? It is about a decade, 10 years.
11 and a half years. Yeah.
So yeah. One of the big questions that I've been asked to ask you, and I'm curious about myself, is one, have you ever arrested somebody for victimless crimes? Because to me, it's hard to, definitely hard to rectify arresting someone, because when you pledge an oath to your badge or your office, you're not pledging an oath to the NAP. So you know what I mean? Like, you have a different set of rules that you're essentially obliging yourself to. And it's up to, I'm sure, each individual officer whether they're going to listen to that or not. But there had to have been cases where you were, arresting people for victimless crimes. Am I wrong?
In this particular case, you're wrong. In general, you're right. Officers are involved in that sort of thing. I was lucky in the sense that I was already a registered libertarian, right? I was able to find a police department that had a separate unit for vice, a separate unit for traffic. And so I didn't have to get all involved with the stuff that I personally consider stupid, like, traffic offenses and using tickets to build up revenue for the city. I didn't have to get involved with prostitution stings and all the asset forfeiture crap that people go through in the prostitution stings. I didn't have to get involved with the war on drugs. I didn't have to arrest people for possession. these sorts of things I was able to avoid.
So you've never arrested someone for possession. You've never committed civil asset forfeiture throughout your career.
No.
Oh, that's good news. That's refreshing to hear, honestly.
Well,
you know what I mean?
Sure. But to be fair to you and your question, which are good questions, it's not because, I'm super cop and I was able to carefully avoid it. It's because I was able to avoid it up front. I was on the road as a patrol officer and just didn't have to get involved with it. Now, that doesn't mean I didn't see it, that I wasn't there when it happened, that, I backed up other officers when they did it. Yeah, all of that happens. But I personally, no.
Do you harbor any level of like guilt for that?
For what?
For being present while these crimes were being committed, and I don't know, or like crimes that the police were committing, in my opinion.
Well, in some sense, they are. Remember that the police are the tail on the dog, right? It's not up to police officers, however you might feel about them. It is not up to police officers to decide, just like it's not up to anyone else to decide, what their job is. They're hired to do a certain job. It is not up to officers to decide what it is that the legislature is going to decide is legal or illegal. Having said that, this is why I did avoid being involved with vice, why I did avoid being involved with traffic. Not every officer makes that choice. And I realize that no matter what choice I make, there's still going to be other officers. The legislature is going to go on. But I do believe that it's important for libertarians to be involved with public service, to be involved with government activities. I mean, consider the alternative. The alternative is that libertarians are not involved. And it's only going to be Democrats and Republicans who are in office or in public service, who work as police officers. I would argue that's not a good idea, right? Was I able to change public policy? No. I suppose, maybe my bad attitude toward certain protocols in the police department may have rubbed off on some people. But I would hasten to add that most police officers have quite a strong libertarian streak. Most of them are registered Republicans, but they have a libertarian streak. Most police officers will tell you that the war on drugs doesn't work. And a lot of police officers will tell you that the war on drugs is unethical. And so it's not like I was the lone voice. Well,
so like on that, like essentially, in my opinion, the presidential campaign for the Libertarian Party is a messaging campaign. We can talk about winning all we want, but really it comes down to having a good message. Do you obviously you believe this is the best vehicle for you to put out that message right now. But in terms of actually facilitating change in that policy, you build up a reputation in your own area. Have you considered running for something like sheriff or trying to do something along those lines where you can actually implement policy changes in those areas, instead of, doing it more on like this more mass scale, I guess?
Yes, the answer to your question is yes, it has crossed my mind and people bring it up all the time. The part of the reason why I have chosen, federal office to pursue as messaging campaigns up until now is because a lot of the issues that I care about, other than just police reform, do revolve around federal policy. I spent a lot of time talking about monetary policy, the reasons we need to end the Federal Reserve System, how to go about ending the Federal Reserve System, capping federal spending, how to go about capping federal spending, ending inflation, ending the federal government's headlong rush into a financial disaster. These are naturally federal issues that I care about a great deal.
And so this might, I'm like, in my opinion, a lot of times when people run for president in the Libertarian Party, they are, in my opinion, on a quest for social capital. And there's a lot of people that are trying to essentially, grow their audience so that they can do bigger things in the future. I don't know whether that's do books or other political adventures or whatever that might be. So you're
I
obviously going to
seriously
be.
doubt that anyone could make a robust argument that serving as a presidential or vice presidential nominee for the Libertarian Party is a stepping stone to fame and riches and success.
I'm not saying fame and riches.
That's a hard argument to make.
I'm definitely not saying fame or riches. Like we are not getting 1% of the vote. I'm just like, that's just my opinion. Like
I hope you're wrong, but we'll see.
Right. But, you know, like I've seen this happen, you know, election after election cycle, you know, and I don't know, like there's a lot to, this does give you at least some exposure. Libertarian clout is nothing to brag about, though. You know, having clout in the libertarian sphere, like I said, we're very niche. While we say we're a big tent, we're also a very small tent. We don't have quite as much, you know, exposure as we might think. So I guess like my question with that would be, where do you want to take this after November? Because like you are building up something, and you know, maybe you have some stuff in the back that you're planning to do, but you don't want to talk about yet. But you know, I do think that it's important to use whatever you gain here, data, information, you know, any new audience you're growing, you have to use it to keep advancing liberty. There's some people that have done this presidential cycles, and then as soon as November was over, they were gone. We never heard from them again. You know what I mean? And I don't think that you're one of those guys.
Most.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying, you know, and I don't think that you're one of those guys, because I've seen you around for a little bit, you know, but.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. No, I'm not one of those guys. I'm not going to try to assert that I'm just ethically head and shoulders above past candidates. That's not what this is about. But I'm relatively young. I didn't used to feel so young, but being in competition with Joe Biden and Donald Trump will make you feel awfully young. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, I'm no longer Joe Biden, but yeah.
Okay. Well, good
You got
point.
someone closer to your age now, so.
Right. Joe Biden's closer to my mother's age. I wonder if that's true about Donald Trump. I'll have to look that up.
Donald Trump, I thought, was old, like he might be the oldest president if he wins this next time.
That's what I hear, is that by the time he leaves office, he'll have surpassed Joe Biden's age right now. So all of that is slightly weird. No, to your point, Ben, I am relatively young. Knock on wood, I'm healthy. I do not anticipate doing nothing after this. For starters, it would drive Nancy crazy if I just sat around and you know, fidgeted all day. That's not going to happen. I want to give you as honest an answer as I've got. This is the most honest answer I can give you, is I don't know.
Okay.
A lot will be determined by how this goes. It's a little consuming at the moment. And so it's as much as I think the responsible thing to do would be to be laying a plan. Right. And I think frankly, the smart thing to do would be laying a plan. It's hard at the moment to think about anything but the campaign. And so the answer to your question is yes. You know, we need to do something. What that is, I just got to be honest. I don't know.
Okay. That's fair. Now I guess we'll kind of like shift gears a little bit here. I would like to bring up a couple of like other things here. So obviously Chase Oliver has some takes that you certainly wouldn't, and you have not talked about, such as gender, you know, like the hormone therapy for minors, stuff like that. And
I've talked about it. To be fair, I've talked about it, but we can talk about it again.
Sure. Yeah. And I know you've talked about it. So, I mean, you guys have probably some pretty strong disagreements. I mean, you come from kind of a religious background, correct?
Yes, sir.
So I do think that like there's some clear things there that probably like they don't line up all the way like philosophically there just because of that alone. And maybe I'm wrong, but I do think like things that I've seen from Chase's campaign is he's very like things, something that I've told him and I disagree with him on. I think he's way too focused on identity politics. And I strongly disagree with the gender, hormone therapy for minors stuff, or as the kids on Twitter like to call it, transing the kids. I would like to hear your take on that. Like, you guys are individuals at the end of the day. Now, I know you're working as a team, so you've got to kind of keep a team energy about you, but it's okay to disagree too. Like, you didn't see Joe and Spike see eye to eye on a lot of things. In fact, they barely talked for most of their campaign. And I don't know how that is here. I'm sure you guys have a decent relationship. I know you guys have talked, you campaigned together for a while.
We do pretty well. Chase and I speak, I don't know what often is, but often enough. We do have a couple of differences, but I don't know that they're killer. And I don't think that that's up to me to characterize. It's up to you. It's up to voters, I suppose, to determine what's important and what's not. We see eye to eye on foreign policy, on monetary policy, on fiscal policy, 1A, 2A, 4, 5, and 6A on the 10th Amendment, on everything that's in, my Gold New Deal, on ending the IRS, ending agencies, holding police account. Just goes on and on and on and on.
Yeah. Now, I don't think that this is something that can just be looped in oh, we just have a disagreement. This is really serious stuff, man. People
let's talk about it. I'm not trying to shirk it. We should talk about it. But my point is, you were talking about whether or not, we have a good relationship. We speak often. We see a lot in common. Yeah, that answer is yes, yes, and yes. So, I wanted to sort of get that out of the way. I think the question that you're trying to bring up is age of consent issues for hormone therapy and the use of chemicals, right?
I guess so. I mean, age of consent is not something that I want to talk about on my podcast very often with libertarians.
I didn't bring it up. You brought it up.
But in terms of hormone therapy for children, I do think that it's extremely damaging to a kid's system as they're growing and puberty blockers and all this stuff. You're
right. My position has always been, I've never, well, I shouldn't say I've never wavered on it. This has only been an issue in the last couple of years. But ever since it came up as an issue, I have not wavered from the fact that I believe that you need to reach a certain age to participate in such an important decision. There is a lot that revolves around informed consent, of course, medical procedures, particularly medical procedures that are in some sense discretionary, right? That have permanent effects, whether those are surgical or chemical, hormones. These things, I believe you need to reach an age of informed consent so you can participate in such an important decision in a really robust fashion. Think about all of the things that go into making such a decision. Data, what are my alternatives? What are the long-term implications? What are the potential side effects?
And there is not a lot of data on this right now. It's still very much so. This is a much newer sweep. They've been doing it for a while, but there is a sweep of large numbers of people that are letting their kids take these puberty blockers. And I can only imagine 10, 20 years from now, we are going to have horrible repercussions from this. I really think this is truly damaging.
You may well be right. My point is that because it's so complex, right? A child cannot possibly fully participate in a robust, informed consent sort of way. You have to reach a certain age at which you can participate in this, to ask all of these questions that you and I have been identifying, but also including, and think about how difficult these questions are. Can I trust my parents' judgment? Can I trust my doctor's judgment? Should I be getting a second opinion? Should I be getting a third opinion? Is my doctor an idiot? These are very difficult questions for a child to participate in. Am I being subjected to, social pressure? Is what I'm reading in social media something that I can believe in or something that's pressuring me? This is not something a child is equipped to deal with. Are there chemical issues that affect the way that my brain is telling me about how I perceive my body. These are extremely complex issues that, I mean, I might even argue that even an adult is ill-equipped to deal with. You know, I shudder to think how difficult these decisions are, no matter how
you're
old
allowed to
you
answer this question. I'm not.
What's that?
Because you're allowed to answer this next question. I'm not, because you're a minarchist. So what do you think that age is? And
honestly, I don't know for sure. That's as honest as I can be. I know what it isn't.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
So what isn't it?
It ain't 12, right?
Okay. Yeah, sure.
Well,
I don't think anyone would like probably disagree with that. I don't actually think that many kids start taking puberty blockers at 12. I think it's more like 14, 15, 16-year-olds, which I still think is like far too young. In fact, like most people's like, you know, their brains aren't even fully developed until they're 24 or 25. So
well,
imagine
exactly
what it's doing
right.
to their,
so,
in the
someone smarter than I am is going to have to decide what that age of consent ought to be. I mean, different states have different ages of consent for all kinds of different things, because these things are difficult to figure out. By the way, and we're not done talking about this, so put a pin in it. We're going to come back to this. Okay. But you said that you're an anarchist.
All the way. Yep.
And I believe you. I'm not trying to say you're not. But what would an anarchist say about protecting children until they've reached an age of consent? How do you square that?
Well, there is such a thing as private law, and I'm a big fan of David Friedman's stance on that. I think that parents are largely responsible for protecting their kids up to a certain age, and that age is to be determined probably by parents. I think that generally, that age is.
What if a parent says 12 is okay?
See, that's the thing, is like that is 100%.
What do you mean that's the thing? I want an answer.
No, and I'm trying to give it to you. That is 100% a NAP violation. Like I don't care what anyone says. But
how do you enforce? I'm asking you, as an anarchist, how do you enforce that?
Through private law, through private repercussions.
Oh, spell it out to me like I'm a 12-year-old. How do you prevent?
Okay, so if you are trying to allow your child to chemically castrate itself, or generally like mutilate its genitals, then I think that there's probable cause that someone's going to try to put you in a wood chipper. It's not going to be me, but somebody will. So,
well, okay,
this is the truth.
My suggestion as a minarchist, by the way, I appreciate where you're coming from, and thank you for being so candid. My suggestion as a minarchist, speaking to an anarchist, is that people have a right to come together in their community and decide to have a criminal code and how they want that criminal code to be enforced. My problem with the way that a lot of policing works today is that I don't think that we have sufficient mechanisms in place to force police departments and police officers and other law enforcement agencies to fully align with the other underlying ethics of the individuals in the community. That's my problem with it. My problem is not that individuals, don't have a right to form communities and form a criminal code. I think that individuals do. And I think this is an example where we like the idea that there's a criminal code, that there's a law enforcement agency. We want it to, first of all, be pursuant to a legislature that forces a criminal code that we agree with, not one that's screwed up like the one that we have today. But we want an agency to enforce a criminal code the way that we want it enforced. But anyway, back to the issue at hand. You're right. I have a hard time picking out what that age of consent ought to be. The age of informed consent, what I would call participatory consent, right? Being able to weigh all of these issues is very difficult. I don't know what that age ought to be.
Well, it does seem, though, that there's like a pretty clear divide from what your personal opinion is and what Chase's opinion is on this. And
let me address that, because it may not be as big as you think it is. And maybe it's exactly what you think it is, but let me share what my perception is. Having spoken with Chase about this, his position on surgeries is the same as mine. That surgeries with permanent effects that are in some sense discretionary require you to reach an age of consent. Okay. So I don't think there really is daylight between us there, where I think that there might be some daylight, and I hesitate to speak exactly for Chase because he might put it differently, right?
Oh, he's welcome to come on my show and talk about it too.
Well, maybe he will.
Yeah.
But my perception of his position is that a lot of data is still coming in. A lot of studies are underway. There is some gray in these areas, right? When it comes to certain chemicals operate this way, certain hormones operate that way. And this is a relatively rapidly evolving area. By the way, all of which is true, all of which you and I just agreed with a moment ago, right?
Right.
And his position is where there is gray and murky terrain, where we draw that line has to be biased in favor of parents making smart decisions. Maybe this actually aligns better with your position, rather than inviting the government in to make these determinations. It's a very libertarian position. It's actually, in my view, a libertarian position that aligns with our Libertarian Party platform better than mine does.
But then what happens when like 30% of the libertarians are okay with giving their kids these, this hormone therapy at 12 years old? I would
argue that is wrong. But and look, you're asking me about someone else's
I know
view here. Yeah. But you were saying a moment ago that you believe that private law ought to take care of this. I don't know exactly how. That sounds like an ex post enforcement. You wait and see what happens, and then you bring action in court. Whereas I would make it against the law to do anything but wait for an age of consent to be reached. But for those libertarians who believe that we need to defer to parents, which you have to admit, there is a logical case for that, right? Even if it's not my position per se, you have to admit there's a logical case to be made for deferring to parents, right? You have to admit that this is an evolving position, that we may see data and experience and culture cut one way or another very clearly over the next couple of years. In that sense, I'm the one that always says I hate using public policy, especially the criminal code, to affect culture. I believe that we need to recognize that culture, right, is upstream of public policy, that public policy has to be the result of culture, not the other way around. This is my big problem with Republicans, is that I get the impression that they're always trying to affect culture with public policy. And that just makes my blood curdle. I don't think that that's the right thing to do.
They're woke right. It's the woke right versus the woke left. This is what the issue is right now. They're woke in their own ways, right? And they both want to implement their own morality on other people through the state's enforcement. And it's very much so the case with, a lot of the, more left-leaning politics, if you want to, the progressive stuff like transgender kids and all this stuff. But it's just the same on the other side. Like I can't go a day without open up Twitter and seeing a bunch of Christian nationalists trying to enforce the Bible on people. And I'm a Christian, but I don't think that's right. You know what I mean? So
you're exactly right. You have put your finger right on it. And I speak as someone who was raised by a Lutheran on the one hand and a Calvinist on the other. My family would be happy to tell you exactly how you should lead your life, right? Just ask them. They've got all kinds of plans for your life. It's my view that you should be leading your life by your own standards and pursuing the path that God has set for you. But the government should not have any role. Public policy should not have any role whatsoever in helping you find that path.
And I think probably one of my biggest criticisms of Chase is obviously, like I said, the identity politics, but also this is a big one because it is a deal breaker for a lot of people. When you start bringing up kids, people are very serious. And I'm about to have a kid, so I'm about to take this probably way more seriously once I see that thing breathing life for the first time. And I'm not trying to
maybe we should pursue that because I'm going to challenge you on that. I don't think Chase has, hey, you show me if you think I'm wrong. Chase has not said anything that supports the use of these chemicals and hormones. He is just saying he's not ready to invite the government in to make this determination while the data is still murky. He wants to defer to parents. That's a big difference.
So Chase will say that on one hand, but then on the other hand, like literally 3 years ago, he's using the data to justify, taking shots for himself and masking up and encouraging and basically telling people like they can't go to his Thanksgiving dinner. This is not your problem. I mean, it kind of is because you're on a ticket with him, but he wouldn't want people at his Thanksgiving dinner because if they weren't masked and vaxxed, you know what I'm saying? So
I think you should dot your I's and cross your T's real carefully here, because you might be misinterpreting some stuff as I have seen. I recognize right now you and I are arguing about someone else's material, but I do not get the impression at all that he has ever said you should use these hormones, you should use these chemicals, that you should get a vaccine. I'm just saying he's trusting the data way too much, and the data is not trustworthy because the physicians. Well, that may be, but consider this. That may be, but consider the following. And I ask you, Ben, as an anarchist, are you an absolutist when it comes to vaccine mandates? In other words, will you agree with me that no matter what, the government has no legitimate right or purpose, cannot be allowed to coerce us into taking a vaccine? Under no circumstance should the government have any say over any medical decision or procedure whatsoever. Okay, so let me pursue this. This is good. By the way, I think I'm winning my initial premise, which is you and I don't disagree as much as you maybe. I mean, I could go in the weeds because, like I said, I am an anarchist, and I could really go in the weeds here with my anarchist philosophy. I'm not. I'm giving you a lot of grace. And I love that. And I love that. But consider the following. Let me offer you a thought experiment, okay? Okay. Let's suppose, and I'm not necessarily, thinking is not my thing, so I'm off. I know I'm off the ranch. You ran for president. We know right, thinking's not your thing, bro. No, so listen up. Let's suppose that there exists a perfect vaccine. If you don't take it, 100% chance you're going to die. If you do take it, 100% chance you're going to live. There's no side effects. It's been perfectly tested. It's perfectly free. It completely shuts down transmissibility 100%. It's literally a perfect vaccine. Okay? This is a thought experiment. I'm not suggesting this thing actually exists. Okay. Perfect vaccine. Would the government have the right to coerce you into taking it? And by coercion, I mean offering you 1 penny to take it. Under no circumstances the government have any right to make any medical procedure or in any whatsoever, like ever at all. Period. Like this is not. It's not okay. Even to offer you 1 penny. No, nothing. There's no way. Agreed. Okay, so you and I are on the same page. Now consider this: if you and I agree about this, which I think is fundamental libertarianism. And it's one of the reasons I love to be on your show and to talk to you about these things, because I think that you and I are on the same page. If this is true, as I believe it is, and as you agree with me, then science has nothing to do with this. Sure. Okay. If science has nothing to do with this, then why would we argue about your perception, my perception, or anybody else's perception about the stupid vaccine? I mean, I can still judge the hell out of people for making stupid freaking posts and saying stupid shit over COVID, man. And I do. And I think I've criticized you for the same stuff, man. So like, I'm going to, I have. How can you criticize me? I've seen the video, dude, of you, and if you think that you should take the COVID vaccine, then you should. I mean, that's to me, right. That was like, if you're not wrong. Think that you should take that. You're darn right. I'm not wrong. Okay. If you think that you should take the vaccine, if that was a nonchalant way of saying, like, I did it because I wanted to. Now you should too. But that video,
is kind of propaganda,
I never
man.
said anything even remotely like that, and you know darn well,
dude.
If you
oh god, I wish I had. You know what I'm talking about too. I know you know what I'm talking about.
I'll tell you exactly what it said. The government has no right to tell you what you should do with your body. If you think that you should wear a mask, go ahead. If you think that you should take a vaccine, go ahead. Yes, I had taken a vaccine, but the government has no place telling you that you should take a vaccine. This is a much more powerful statement than yours, which is, I don't believe in vaccines. Vaccines suck.
I never said I don't believe in vaccines either, by the way. I'm actually not an anti-vax person.
That is the implication of everything you say, is that the reason you don't like vaccine mandates is because you don't like the science. You don't like the vaccines.
That's not even my say at all. That's not even anything.
Ben, listen to me.
Sure.
You undermine your libertarian philosophy when you bring science into this.
I don't disagree. And I don't typically bring science into conversations about libertarianism.
But you do when you say,
when I start talking about transing the kids, yes, I do. Because it's bad for their bodies.
Yeah. Agreed. And you and I are on the same page there. But if you believe that you should run around naked in January and that you should be taking, your clothes off and rolling around in the ice and stay out there all night, right? Then you do you. I personally think that's moronic. You might want to talk to a doctor about that before you do something profoundly stupid. But when you and I are talking about public policy, we should not make the mistake of saying that we think certain behaviors are a good idea or a bad idea. It's much more powerful to say, I stand up for your right to make any decision that you want to make, even if it's completely different than, for example, what my doctor told me.
You still have the right to judge the hell out of people. And it's not based off of science. It's based off of
statistics. You don't have the right to undermine your own philosophical argument.
But you can judge people.
Make that argument based on libertarian principles.
You can certainly judge people. If they're not listening to statistics, you can call them stupid. It's okay. I do that all the time.
Okay. Yes, you have the right to do that. I'm trying to help you. I'm not trying to argue with you.
I know. I'm just saying.
In the sense of judging you. I'm trying to help you and make you more effective. Let me give you another example. Do you work out every day?
I haven't worked out in months because I work construction.
You don't owe me any explanation, okay?
Yeah.
I could judge you based on you not working out every day.
You should actually fat shame me. I encourage everybody to fat shame me right now to get my ass into shape. Look, I'm serious. It works. Okay.
When you and I are offline, and your viewers can probably tell that you and I have talked about some pretty weird shit when we're offline. So, that's all well and good. When you and I are offline, I can fat shame you, workout shame you. You can shame me for all the stupid stuff I do. And that's probably a really long list. I'll give you that. But when we are talking about public policy and we're talking about the government's regulation of that behavior, we should not be judging that behavior in the same conversation. It completely undermines our argument.
Maybe if it does, that's okay. I also think that there's some people out there that are meant to literally just talk philosophy, right? But then there's also there is a place for people to judge people where you judge people that disagree.
There is a place. I'm just arguing that those are two different places.
Well, it's part of apologetics,
to talk about public policy, and there's a place to fat shame each other.
So maybe judging is the wrong word too, because speaking as a Christian, right? So, in terms of apologetics, you go up and talk to somebody, right? And you combat their arguments with your own logic. And you are kind of judging them based on what their thoughts are, right? And it's in the same way. Libertarians suck at apologetics, and we need to get better at talking to people in areas that we disagree. like transing the kids, like vaccines. And it doesn't always have to be off of, purely science. We should go off of statistics. It's okay to call people out on their bullshit on that. But it's also, we need to, be better at presenting these opposing ideas. And I'm not saying like come across as like attacking somebody, because like, yeah, you can fat shame me. I'm not going to take it personal. I know I'm not fat. Do you know what I mean? But like, if you told me like, dude, you should work out.
Do you think the government should be able to regulate how much you work out?
Obviously not. And we would agree on that.
What do you mean, obviously? That's not obvious. We haven't discussed this yet.
It's perfect. Like, I don't agree on any kind of government regulation for the human body whatsoever. We have been over that.
Why is it that the government doesn't have the authority to regulate your workouts?
Because you have bodily autonomy and you're an individual. That's why.
Okay. So why is it that when we talk about vaccines, you talk about whether the vaccines are good or bad?
Well, because there's clear statistics that prove
no,
that they're inefficient.
You are correct, but that is the wrong answer.
You have bodily autonomy, so you have the right to make dumb decisions. That's the truth. But like,
you have the right to
make
dumb decisions.
It's also okay to hold people accountable for making dumb decisions. It's
not
true.
In a public policy sense. It's not.
Why can't we hold politicians accountable for doing these type of stupid things? Like, that's just
yeah, you can criticize someone for all the stupid things you do.
We can't hold ourselves accountable. Like Christians hold themselves accountable.
When we are discussing public policy, as we are today, look, the reason you had me on your show is not because I'm Mike and I'm so charming and good looking. Lord knows that can't be
did have like the highest ranking for looks. If you remember, I ranked all the presidential candidates and you were an 8 out of 10 when it came to looks, Mike. You were the most attractive libertarian candidate that was on the table. So
look, I appreciate that very much. But the reason you invited me on your show today is because I am a nominee for a public office representing a party in which you and I are members. The implication is that everything we discuss is about public policy.
Oh, everything you discuss is about public policy.
All right. Well, that's a good point. Look, when we get done with this, okay, you asked me earlier what comes after November.
Mm-hmm.
Have me on your show after the election and we'll talk about workouts. But until then, it's no one's business.
And if I weigh the same as I do right now, you have every right to judge me because I know I need to lose some weight. You can back up.
I'm not going to judge you, but I will talk about how important it is to eat right and sleep right.
If I
work out right?
Bring up like one more question before we wrap up. I know we kind of are already at time. If you have the time,
we're in overtime, aren't we? Okay, one more. Let's go.
If you're okay with it,
yeah, go ahead. One more.
So there's, obviously DC was very contentious. I really wanted to talk about all the like state affiliate drama with this stuff too, but we can talk about maybe another time.
It's not worth your time.
It's probably not worth your time, but at least in DC, there's a lot of people that were like pro Mike that flipped because they thought that you had turned your back on them, and I kind of want to like touch on that briefly on people in the Mises Caucus because they had been told that they were going to have your support if you didn't make it past a certain point.
No one was told that.
Well, I mean, I recall having heard from the other campaign that you guys had those conversations weeks before the convention. So it came as a shock to a lot of people.
That. I'm going to call you out on that. I don't think you heard
I wouldn't lie about it. I definitely wouldn't lie about it. So I have absolutely no dog in this fight. My candidate was Lars Mapstead. That's who I voted for all the way through to the end. So I just truthfully, like, I have no dog in this fight.
Well, let me be as honest as I would be, with my maker. Okay.
Sure.
There was no deal in place. There was no quid pro quo. There was no promise. Explicitly, I had said to other candidates, all of them, by the way, and the people coordinating those campaigns, all of them, by the way, the following words: there is no deal. we have no deal. And repeatedly, there can be no mistake. There is no misinterpretation here. If someone told you that I had promised someone that I would support them, you need to think real hard why someone would say this to you now that you know that it's not true. Okay. It is true that I expected to support a certain candidate. I had looked forward to supporting that candidate if I dropped out first. In fairness, I didn't expect to drop out first, but, weird things happen. And, I did. I dropped out with two other candidates still in the running for the presidential nomination. Absolutely. And it is true that over the last couple of weeks, a lot of things happened regarding the strategy that was chosen by the team to which you make reference.
Okay.
Strategic announcements that I could not tolerate. And as if that weren't enough, and it would be. And a lot happened over the last 24 hours. And I don't know if people are gaslighting themselves or gaslighting each other, but a lot happened over the last 24 hours. And there is no mistaking the fact that Chase Oliver did a terrific job the night before in handling that press conference. Anyone who tells you otherwise is lying to your face, bald-faced. These things matter. You cannot pretend, as much as I wish I could, you cannot pretend that these things don't matter. The other thing that people will not tell you is that I asked the two campaigns that were still in the running to work together and to cut me out. Did you know that?
I mean, no, I mean, there's
no, you didn't know
like
that.
I said, there's a lot
Why
of Why
is it that people didn't tell you that?
Well, obviously there's so walking into DC, I knew that there's going to be competing narratives.
No, Ben, don't leave this behind. Think about this.
Yeah.
At that moment, when I got eliminated, I asked the two campaigns to work together and to cut me out. Why is it that people don't tell you that? Think about that. Why is it that people don't talk about that?
It just doesn't fit their narratives they're trying to spin, obviously. So, but
that's the truth. I asked the teams to work together, and they, on one side, said no.
Right. So, and this type
I tried to extricate myself from this. I tried not to run for VP.
Well, so then you're saying you were forced to run for VP. Is that what you're saying?
I'm not saying I was forced, but the premier choice of the other two teams working together was declined. And so the only choice left to me was, you want to participate or don't you? And I did want to participate because I thought that, to be honest, and this is going to sound a little self-serving, but you asked for honesty. Absolutely. I thought I was the next best candidate left to serve as VP, just being honest. So I accepted the opportunity.
Well, I remember what you told me. You said specifically, we talked in the hallway right after all of that happened at DC. And I said, man, like, I'm kind of disappointed because I had heard that you were going to go this other way. Then you went this way. And I had already known like a lot of the stuff that I had disagreed with on Chase. So he wasn't my guy. He was my least favorite candidate. I'm being honest. Yeah. And what you told me was this wasn't what's best for me. This is what's best for the party. And do you still believe that?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, like,
what's the alternative? That it wasn't best for the party? I don't think there's any question.
I don't
given
think
the circumstances. Yeah.
I'm not sure, like, I guess where to go from there. I know that there's a lot of people on every side of everything that are, and you're telling us here publicly, if people have something that they can bring forward that's like proves that you're not telling the truth, I'm sure that you would welcome that. But I don't have any, I don't think that you're lying to me at all. And here's the thing is that, like, politics is very dirty game, and I'm on the LNC now. So I'm not here to, try to like make you look bad or anything. Cause like we're friends. Like we've talked offline. I've seen you multiple times. We've interviewed you for the emo caucus. You raised 2 emo daughters, for goodness sakes. I think our biggest agreement is on the national anthem. Biggest disagreement. But I see this happening all the time. There's all these different factions in the party. They'll tell you what you want to hear so that you believe whatever their side of the story is. And
I don't think
people get cut out.
I hear you. I agree. And by the way, that's well said. Good for you. I don't think that most of this is what I would characterize as important. I've answered your questions truthfully because you asked them. Right. And, I figure you asked them in good faith. But do I think that it's important? No.
Well, I appreciate it, man. Like you're literally the nominee for vice president on the Libertarian Party ticket, or should I say Libertarian ticket?
Yes.
I don't have anything.
By the way, thank God that was the mistake. Think about all of the weird mistakes that could have been made. If you're going to spell a word wrong, right? Think about all the weird letters that could have been included. Thank God that's how it came out.
Yeah.
Oh, and by the way, our guy, Evan Murphy, who manages, our social media channels, who is, not the one who made this particular mistake. I need to call out Evan. He has been an absolute trooper. He is a professional. He did everything he could to fix that in as timely a fashion as possible. He was quite angry with me for having facilitated the path that led to this mistake being made. He hung in there as a real trooper. He did take it personally because he does take our, legitimacy. He takes our credibility very personally as a consummate professional. And I need to publicly thank Evan for sticking with our campaign and not either quitting or shooting me right there on the spot, either one of which would have been perfectly justified.
Well, Mike, I appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on and answering some of the tough questions that people are pushing at you on Twitter all the time. Now you can point everyone to one spot where you answered all the questions. You're like, hey, look at this. I already answered this question. You should go listen to my answer there. That way you don't have to keep answering it. And, I do wish you nothing but the best on the campaign trail. I know that it's hard and it's challenging. But you're doing what you got to do. And I'll have you back on the show after November, and we can talk again, and you can give me maybe some of your more personal, thoughts on things that don't involve the team. So, I guess from this point, just tell people where they can find you, how they can support you in the campaign. Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks a lot, Ben. It's been a real joy to be with you, as it always is a joy to talk with you. And by the way, I'm going to claim victory. I don't think that you and I see the world very differently at all. And I don't think that we have much in the way of disagreement. And I say the reason you don't like the national anthem is because I sing it so poorly. That's the primary reason.
It's because it needs to be the Black Parade by My Chemical Romance. And you said no. That's why. So,
all right. We'll talk about that next time.
Okay, man. Well, thanks again. I'm going to drop you backstage. We can talk again in just a second. But I appreciate your time. And we'll talk again in a couple months, man. Thank you.
Take care.
All right. Thanks again for watching tonight, guys. I hope I was able to ask and get all your questions answered, as well as some of my own. Mike's a good guy. I've talked to him a bunch of times. We definitely have disagreements. He might think that we're closer than we are. I promise you, we're going to get into anarchy versus manarchy next time he's on the show. He might not like some of the things I have to say about that. So we'll go from there. We'll see you guys again on Sunday afternoon, and then next Wednesday as well. So hope you guys have a good one. See ya.